Hey there, traveler. Do you want to earn some coin? I need 10 wolf pelts. Can you kill 10 wolves and bring them to me? I'll pay you 20 gold. Or perhaps you're interested in bringing me some rat tails for my rat tail collection. I'll pay 15 gold. Animals like rats and wolves are a common occurrence in a variety of video game genres, as an enemy in most. A weak beginner-level tutorial stage enemy, mowed down in dozens for resource farming and skill increases and bare-ass fetch quests. Spawned and respawned, becoming obsolete and inconsequential in 5 hours of gameplay, if not less. And then just swatted down like flies whenever they get annoyingly close. Think of video games where you kill stuff that's not exclusively people and that isn't set in too far from regular wildlife world. Were there rats? Were there bears? Were there wolves? Were they hard to kill? Do you even remember? Do you even care? I'm not going to shame games for using design tropes as old as games themselves. I'm not particularly mad or bored about needing to whack some rats with a low-level sword to get the game going. It's a part of the routine. However, there are games that do it differently. For some reason, when I think about this topic, the first thing that comes to my mind is the original Tomb Raider and its remastered version. Apart from the bosses, almost the whole population of the enemies in the game are all kinds of predators. Wolves, bears, crocodiles, lions. The shooting sequences are there to break up the monotony of climbing and puzzle solving. The next two installations follow the same pattern, and in the remake Tomb Raider Anniversary you can listen to quite an interesting bit of unlockable developer commentary.
So in TR1 I felt like, apart from the fact that I didn't think we could do very good humans at the time, like other human enemies, it seemed to me like a much nicer thing to do to have the enemies be animals, sort of, vicious animals like bats and rats and things.
Which is ironic because I think now most people would consider killing animals way crueler than killing people.
It is, yeah. I mean, pretty much, the worst thing about it is, of course, they're all endangered species. None of this occurred to me at the time. To be honest with you, I just thought, great, we're not killing humans hardly at all. What a great selling point.
When we redid it, we went and we looked at the animals in TR1 and they weren't very mean looking, which made killing them even worse.
I remember my teddy bear model was very cute.
That's right. So we consciously tried to sort of go back and make the animals much more vicious this time around, so you didn't feel so bad about killing them. You can maybe only lose about an hour of sleep instead of all night.
How curious! Putting in effort to make the animals look scary and bad so the players wouldn't feel too horrible about killing them. I can sure see the shift towards human enemies becoming more normal, but I feel like discarding the video games are evil crowd, I have never actually saw the discourse on the topic. Sure, surface level Google search fetched me some articles written on how it might be wrong to kill animals in games, but I feel like boob physics spark harder debate among gamers. The articles use colorful language like abusing animals or torturing animals, but I am yet to find an example of truly horrifying violence towards animals in video games. They are just walking targets of various sizes that drop loot. Hit it, watch it drop, get your reward. On higher levels, you don't even bother. The only morality attached to non-human animals is usually reserved for pets and other companion creatures. You wouldn't kill this dog, right? Especially if it has a name. However, the nameless, distinctionless mobs around the woods are not a concern. Going back to Tomb Raider, another remaster, the 2013 Tomb Raider, puts some emphasis on a random deer mob in the beginning of the story. Young and inexperienced Lara has to kill an animal to have food to eat, but soon the foreshadowing whispers, we're going to be slaughtering a small army of people in all manner of ways. But here, still in the beginning, she's looking at her clean hands with implied deer blood in horror. Deer are still there throughout the game, orange archery practice targets, dropping a little bit of resources and giving a minuscule amount of experience points. On higher levels, you don't even bother. Unlike wolves, they aren't even enemies. The through threads are, of course, people. this is a little side mechanic, nothing more. Another thing to do in this open world-ish action adventure, akin to shooting hanging targets in the trees and looking for secret stashes. Mods and games that are about hunting but in reality are something else entirely, gameplay-wise, like Monster Hunter and The Witcher aside, that's what hunting in non-hunting simulators is often like. Just target practice on the side that yields relatively cheap resources and enough food for a snack at best. Man, I love the long dark, especially in winter. Nothing better to make a cup of tea and, sitting in the warm comfort of my home, traverse the snowy Canadian wilderness of the Big Bear Island. The game isn't new by any means, but has a well-deserved community of players and received somewhat frequent updates. I've been playing it since early access days, spending what feels like half my life at the camp office near Mystery Lake. Yet, I am still not particularly good at the game, to be honest. I mean, I have the core concepts down. Cold is the fastest killer, hunger is the slowest, but wearing the warmest coat you have isn't always the wisest idea. Plenty of much better writers than me pointed out that the thing that separates Long Dark from most survival games is how small the victories are. And I couldn't agree more. There will be no base building, no planting, no primitive production chains, nothing. The biggest achievements in the game might look bleak in comparison to some more usual ones. Just survive for that many days, craft a bag, find a hat, craft a heavy bedroll. Trust me, they don't feel bleak. The game intentionally removes all of the video gamey flair of survival, leaving you to just walk in relative silence, watching your temperature meter go down in quiet horror. No decision is free of consequences, and apart from Northern Lights of the main plot, there is nothing magic or supernatural in the game. No zombies, no cults, no people, no way out, just you and the wilderness, and the cold, and the thirst, and the hunger. It's still a game, of course. When playing for pleasure, I mostly choose the Stalker difficulty or custom setting, because otherwise the resource spawn rate kills the whole survival vibe for me, turning the game into a hoarder simulator. I have a prepper side to me, everybody who grew up poor does, so I simply cannot resist putting an extra can of beans in my bag, even in the game. Just in case. Carry a spare knife, just in case. Have a spare coat, just in case. Funny how lived experience of being afraid of losing everything you have or not being able to get something anymore neatly translates to a person's playstyle in a survival game. I love it when real-life survival and video game survival don't feel so distant from one another. And just like in real life, you really don't have to get your hands dirty unless you're really down bad, or in it for the long run. See, the game never forces you to kill anything in survival, and encourages you to stay cautious and run instead of fighting. Hell, in good weather and without too much gear to carry, you can outwalk a wolf. And even with low resource spawn rate, you have plenty to eat, from chips, beans and dog food to acorns and cattail. You can fish too, although I suppose it's technically killing, but gameplay-wise it's more like a game of roulette. Wolves, bears, deer, hell, even rabbits are no beginner mobs. You really have to earn every kill, unless you are one of the crazy good players who can 360 no-scope a moose from a handmade bow. It's hard. It will take you days and days of scouting the map to find or craft something even capable of taking down a deer, and running and throwing rocks at rabbits, and for a humble 500 calories you have to prepare just doesn't seem to be worth the time. On lower difficulties you have so much pork and beans, peaches, sardines and peanut butter you don't know what to do with it all. Hunting prey animals like rabbit and deer is at least safe. Taking on a wolf or worse, a bear, is a pretty reliable way to fade into the long dark, and carrying meat and guts around attracts extra attention from them. Wolves can fuck you up, bears will fuck you up, and moose, don't even come near a moose unless you have a week worth of food and firewood to recover when it tramples you to the brink of death. I don't know how long you need to play the game to feel on top of the food chain. I've put probably around 400 hours into the whole thing over the years, and I still twitch when I see a tiny dot with a bear's walking animation on the other side of the lake. At first, it's really not worth it. Interloper difficulty aside, it's much safer to run through the areas like a swarm of locusts, looking after every bed, opening every kitchen cabinet, and sweeping every single location clean before moving on to the next one, slowly growing your resource hoard. The thing is, after all, it's winter, and post-apocalypse is in a very remote area, so nothing ever respawns beside animals. You can, and unless you die a stupid and preventable death, will eat everything around you. The game is pretty tasteful in its hunting system. It's not overly tedious, the animals are right there in the open, no touching poop, sniffing tracks, or making whistles needed. But killing them is not that easy. The AI is not too terrible, and depending on the animal, it will flee or fight. Technically, a bear is the easiest animal to kill in the game. Just shoot it point blank in the face with a flare pistol as it's charging full speed directly at you. But it sure doesn't feel that way. I just don't have the balls to do it. Bears are scary. They bleed though. Like almost every animal in the game, if you hit them at least once, doesn't matter an arrow or a bullet, they will eventually bleed out. And if you manage to locate the carcass, it's yours. The cruel tactic is pretty normal in the long dark. Wound a deer or a wolf or a bear and follow it until it dies, if you can. Some animals, if you lose track, will wander somewhere so far away to die you might never find them. Or find them in a few in-game weeks later and wonder, when did you do that? If your marksmanship is good enough and you have ammunition to spare, you can save yourself the trouble of running around. Or you can hunt small game, rabbits and recently birds. I love the design choice of making the player look into the rabbit's eyes and then snap its neck. The longer you look, the harder it gets. They make sad noises when you hit them too. It's not overly gruesome, but the animals feel realistic enough, without goofy death ragdoll animations or inventory to extract resources from. Even for a survival game, the resources from the carcasses are pretty abundant. A deer yields around 10 kilos of meat, enough to feed you for days, and bigger animals like bear and moose will fill your entire inventory with meat. And every animal has guts and hide that you can harvest and use as well. You don't get to just pick it up and walk away. You have to spend time and calories taking the carcass apart, and the difficulty is affected by your tools and the temperature around. Poorly planned hunting trip will kill you. But the more you do it, the better you're at it, the better your aim, the smarter you are. Hunting allows you to keep yourself well fed and make pretty useful and valuable items, especially on interloper difficulty, where you don't get to find nice stuff just laying around. Game-breaking levels of players' skill aside, it's a very grounded and well-balanced approach to hunting, looking particularly great among low-level target practice in other games. The sound of the meat cooking by the fire feels especially good as it is earned. When I play The Long Dark enough, it always makes me crave some stew. Fortunately, I don't have to kill and scavenge ingredients for my stew myself. I grew up and currently live in a pretty interesting region, and I have some pretty interesting heritage as well. You see, Siberia is really fucking cold. The local cuisine, Buryat, is quite poor in vegetables and grains. It exists in the same family as Mongolian cuisine, so basically meat with a side of meat, some milk, cheese, and occasional dough thrown in. So we have pretty good and cheap meat here. I go to the same person every time I need meat, a lovely Buryat lady, but she doesn't kill the animals for meat either. But somewhere relatively nearby, in a village few hours away, somebody I have never met raises and feeds the cows and the pigs and the lambs and the horses I'm going to eat. And someone kills them too, skins the carcass, and then I get a couple of kilos to cut and sort at my kitchen table. I really do love meat. One of my earliest non-miserable memories of my childhood is one of my father, who has even more northern heritage coming from Yakutia. I remember him bringing a fresh cow liver, remember eating it raw, slightly frozen for flavor and texture, dipping it in salt, my fingers just a touch bloody, with my mother and father. It's delicious, I swear. My mom is more of a pork kind of lady. I remember her back on one of our trips to distant relatives in some village, making happy noises as she was cutting some thin slivers of scrubbed but raw pork skin and eating it with the same little dipping bowl of salt. Back when my grandmother was young, one of her friends liked eating lamb heads whole. A cow's tongue, the biggest New Year's delicacy of my childhood. A cow's heart, the best ingredient for a light stew, lean and dense. Man, if I went on one of those carnivorous fat diets, I'd make every day a feast, and those cringe Americans are eating 5 burger patties and raw testicles for breakfast. Back when I was a kid, a meal without meat or at least dairy was considered not food by my parents. In villages where my family is from, mothers gave their small children chunks of cured pork to suck on instead of pacifiers, with thick strings sewn through to pull it out in case the kid chokes on it. Waste nothing. I love a Mongolian old saying, you can use every part of a horse apart from its breath. I grew up in a city relatively detached from the land and most of the indigenous culture, but I still have this relationship with food, although I don't follow its wisdom as much now for the lack of money and time. I still remember the fairy tales though. One in particular, a Slavic classic about an evil stepmother and a cow. Instead of having a fairy godmother or whatever, the protagonist, a kind, hardworking orphan, takes care of a cow, talks to the cow about her troubles, and the cow magically helps her. But one day, when the evil stepmother finds out about it, she orders her husband to slaughter the animal. He, begrudgingly, the cow is still young and healthy, complies, but the cow continues to help the girl even after death. Horses, wolves, bears, birds, even fish are prominent characters in Slavic folklore, and even more so in some indigenous cultures of Northern Asia. Not anthropomorphized, but symbolic of nature, magic, god or gods. It's complicated, contradictory relationship between the animals you don't necessarily want to kill, but kill anyway. People like to say that humans are on top of the food chain, but I entirely disagree. Human society is on top of the food chain. Every single human playing their part in their dominance over the planet. The only reason I don't have to eat dried sheep cheese and tediously hunt, dress and cook small game is that the entire system of millions of people makes sure I have an abundance of canned beans. The human society removed itself from the natural cycle, and the only reason no animal is going to eat my flesh when I die is that I am born in this centuries-old system. If I was alone or even slightly detached from the modern world, things would be entirely different. I often hear an argument from vegans, putting it on billboards and stuff, an emotional appeal. Dogs and cows are the same, implying that you shouldn't eat a cow the same way you wouldn't eat your dog. I, for once, agree with the phrase that dogs and cows are the same. The only thing making them different is the distance between us and how hungry I am. Farmers of the past formed a relationship with their cattle, loved them, took care of them, named them, and then killed and ate them. Back in 1941, in September, the Nazi forces began the siege of Leningrad, which lasted for over 2 years. Of course, the blockade wasn't entirely airtight, but the food quickly became scarce. The city quickly ran out of dogs, cats, and pigeons. I doubt anybody killed their family dog feeling anything but sorrow at first. A lot of people put their pets down even before the food crisis fully started, knowing the fate that would await them. In November, the first cases of cannibalism were reported. However, diaries and statements of people who were in the siege city tell us the minds of citizens quickly adapted to considering pets food. Some found it easier, some found it harder, but when your child is dying from malnutrition, a cow and a dog really are the same. It took a while for survivors to stop looking at cats and dogs as prey. Starvation combined with cold and harsh winter with not enough fuel to keep warm claimed over 600,000 lives. Severed the people's connection to overall industrial society, and the strictness of morals regarding animals will be stripped away quickly. Living things are the same, truly, and how willing a person is to kill them depends entirely on their circumstance. In a casual run in long darks, short enough, difficulty low enough, you really don't have to kill anything you don't want to. The traces of top of the food chain society linger on Big Bear, in kitchens and backpacks, lending a helping hand to the player, no longer an apex predator. Like I said, wolves and bears will kill you, much like real life. It's not a concern that you have probably, especially in winter when, unlike in Long Dark, bears hibernate and don't really show up unless something is really wrong. But if you're a villager in a warmer season, you have a chance to get some really cool fucking scars when you go out to gather on wild plants or hunt. The bears, of course, don't consider humans prey. We've been too long parted with the ecosystems to have that kind of niche, but it's self-defense. In the game, it's a bit difficult to fully grasp why a wolf or a bear is attacking you. Are you food? Are you a threat? The in-game explanation is that the northern lights are making the animals crazy. Regardless, you will spend days stuck in a cabin waiting for the bear outside to move to a different location. Spend calories and twist ankles, taking detours to avoid a potentially deadly run-in. Learn to walk quickly, keeping track of the wolf stalking you, and know the sound of it charging by heart. At least you can fight off a wolf, especially if you have a weapon. With a revolver or a rifle, you can even deter a bear. This is how your first in-game kill usually happens. A predator bleeding out after you part ways. I remember killing a bear like this in the first 5 days once. It felt terrible. It felt like cheating. The bear pelt drying in the trapper's cabin felt stolen and unearned. It wasn't even good for anything. I need 2 to make one of the warmest coats in the game. Nothing can be made with just one hide, you know. This winter I mostly wear this short sheepskin coat. I wonder how many different hides were used for it. Does it feel earned to wear it? I don't know. For sure feels pretty fucking warm though. Deerskin pants feel more earned in the game. Mine often come from scavenging deer carcasses around the world with no actual hunting, and it does take a while to gather necessary materials and craft them. If you're trying to survive on Interloper, hunting for clothes becomes a necessity as well as hunting for food. There are barely any traces of treasures of industrialized society. You don't even get to find a knife on Interloper. The kill or be killed mindset comes quickly as you become as dangerous as you are afraid. And the spring never comes. You could play a whole year, 365 days, and it will never be anything but what feels like the middle of January. Something the real world fortunately doesn't share. There is always a better time to look forward to. Spring and summer to replenish your stores and keep your bones warm. I imagine it feels video gamey to hit the 300 days mark. The longer you survive, the more out of touch with reality the game becomes. I don't think I ever went over 50 days. I don't think I ever got used to hunting in Long Dark. My playthroughs are rarely long enough or resource scarce enough for me to really get good at it. But I can see it happening. This fragile gray area relationship with wildlife is one of the reasons I keep coming back to this game again and again, starting over again and again. I'm not going to overpraise the Long Dark on this. After all, it's just a survival game that's been around long enough to lose part of its magic. It can never be the thing to comment on complex relationship between people and our food. I don't think it's possible for one thing to talk about the entirety of the issue at all. But it does put you in a very different mindset, in a different pattern, in a different emotional state, and then you can figure it out within your own mind from there. Where do you stand? Are the calories worth it? Does the hide you wear feel earned? Compare the cabin crawls, cattail gathering, and rabbit hunting to your life, to the lives of your ancestors, to the history of your society, to your folklore. Look for your roots. Eat some stew.